therapist, relationship strategist to help you improve your relationships, and honestly take ownership, and especially in this one today, taking ownership of your own behaviors and recognize that you have a lot more power and control in your relationship that you might be giving yourself credit for. If you saw the live stream yesterday where I was talking about how it's important to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, and maybe I should have did this personal responsibility one beforehand, but in any case, these two tie together. So if you haven't seen it, definitely go check it out. But watch this one and then watch that one together. And I'm telling you, it's going to change everything for you because it's going to realize where your locus of control and power is in your relationship. And it's not over the other person. And a lot of times what happens is we try to control our partner. We try to get them to do what we want them to do, think how we want them to think, talk how we want them to talk. And then we get mad when we can't control them. And then we say they're being difficult or they're not listening, or they don't care, they don't understand, they don't love us, whatever, right? And we start blaming them for why the relationship is bad, why it's wrong, why it's a problem, right? And then there's even some people that will come to therapy under the guise of doing couples counseling. But a lot of times it's like, well, I want to get my husband or my wife in front of a counselor to tell them how they're wrong and how they need to fix themselves. And so what's the underlying factor under all of this? The underlying factor is that we're not taking responsibility. We're not taking personal responsibility for what we do in our relationships. We always want to talk about what the other person's doing. We use a lot of you statements. Well, you do this and you do that. And we're in session as, well, he does this and he does that. And he thinks this way and he thinks that way. And she feels this and she feels that. And she does this and it's always about the other person. I don't even know if we recognize how much we actually talk about the other person and how little we actually talk about ourselves. How much we actually blame the other person versus how much we actually talk about ourselves and the behaviors we do. So today we're going to be talking about taking personal responsibility and why it's so critical for you to take personal responsibility in your relationship. We're going to have a spiritual component to it as well, and just kind of talk about where it all came from, why this was even a big thing for me when I finally found it out, right? So without further ado, let's just kind of hop into it. First of all, what is personal responsibility? Well, I don't have a Webster dictionary definition, but the way I see it as personal responsibility is us being able to be fully accountable for our actions, regardless of why we did them. And that's my definition of it, right? It doesn't mean that means if you're in an argument with your spouse, and let's just say they called you a name, and then you called them a name back. Personal responsibility is not saying, oh, well, I'm only going to apologize if they apologize. Personal responsibility is going to say, you know what? I shouldn't have called them a name, period. There's no excuse for me to call them a name. That goes against my character, against my morals, my values. And so I'm going to own that, and I'm going to apologize to them. That's what I'm going to do. And you go and do that. That's what personal responsibility is. Personal responsibility is no matter how bad the other person does, it's I am in control of my behaviors. I am owning them. But why don't we take personal responsibility in relationships? Why don't we do that? If we know how great it is, because it is great. Somebody gives you your power, allows you to control your behaviors, allows you to make decisions and set boundaries and do the right thing because it's the right thing to do and show up as your best self. It allows you to do everything. Even, listen, and sometimes, some cases when the relationship ends, it even gives you the power to leave without having resentment and bitterness towards the other person. There's nothing but good that comes from it. So then why don't we do it? Why don't we take personal responsibility more often? Why don't we go into it like, yeah, you know what? Whatever I do, if it's not right, if it isn't aligned with how I'm supposed to be, I'm going to own that and apologize and fix that. Why don't we do that? Well, a lot of times it comes from when we're younger. A lot of times it comes from when we're younger and then we're taught that being wrong makes us bad. And so if I'm wrong, if I own that behavior, that means inherently I'm bad. And there's a lot of us running around with that underlying thought process, that underlying belief that if I'm wrong, I'm bad. So I can never be wrong. So I'm going to fight and fight and fight and fight and fight and push and blame, so that I don't have to be bad. There's a lot. We don't even know we're doing that. But if you think about when we're children. How often when you were a child, when you made a mistake, did someone actually come around and say, hey, Susie or Tyrone or John or whatever, right? Hey, you made that mistake. Hey, what happened? Tell me about that. What was your thought process behind that mistake? Hey, what do you think we could do different next time in the future so that doesn't happen? Now, how much actual learning and teaching went into when you made a mistake when you were younger so you could learn how to do it different or better in the future? Close to none. Close to none. Generally, for most of us, it was close to none. More often than not is you got an angry look. You got a, here you go again, making a mistake again. Gosh, man, why do you always do? Just get out. Just get out. Get out, right? In school, you get criticized, made fun of if you make a mistake, so you don't even want to raise your hand anymore. Do that enough times at earlier in age, and no one wants to take personal responsibility because we've now associated taking personal responsibility with being a horrible human being, with being a bad person. And then on the other side of that, what happens to that? If I'm a bad person, that means I'm going to be rejected. If I'm rejected, it means I'm not going to get the thing I crave and desire the most, that every single human on the planet desires: love. That's where all this comes from. That's why people don't want to take personal responsibility. That's why they want to blame everybody else, because people are terrified that if I own my behaviors and I apologize, that I'm going to be viewed as a horrible person, and my husband or my wife, they're not going to want a horrible person, so they're going to leave me, be with somebody else, and now I'm not going to be loved, and now I'm going to be all by myself and miserable. So no one wants that. So what do? We don't take personal responsibility. We blame everybody else. We blame our husband. We blame our spouse. We blame everybody else. We don't want to own any of our behaviors. And here's some of the problems with that, right? Here's some of the issues associated with not taking personal responsibility. One of the first issues that comes with it is there's no growth. If there's no personal insight, there's no insight on your own behaviors, looking at yourself, there can be no growth. If in your relationship, you're in a conversation and you can't see that you're part of what you did wrong and how you had blame and accusation and criticism and contempt, you can't see what you did wrong, then you can't grow. If you just blame your husband all the time or blame your wife all the time, you can't grow. And you're like, oh no, Keith, that's not true because I read a book. Did that book change your behaviors? Did that book change the situation? No, it didn't, because you're not owning your behaviors. Because maybe you got the information, maybe your thought process is wrong. And because your thought process is wrong, it's creating the same result on the other side. But if you're always blaming everybody else, if it's everybody else's fault, then if I give you all the skills in the world, if you still have that mindset, then guess what? You're not going to see. You know what you're going to see? Again, you're not going to take personal responsibility. What you're going to end up doing is, I've done everything and they do absolutely nothing. They just never show up. Gosh, so the things aren't right. It's because of them. So we do. That's not growth. Because guess what? You take that same mindset, even with all the tools, that same mindset into the next relationship and do the exact same thing. Because you're not going to see, dang, man, maybe my mindset's wrong. Maybe I'm missing what they're doing. Maybe the way I'm talking to them is wrong. Maybe I'm dismissing them or invalidating them. Maybe I'm interrupting too much. Or that's where the growth comes from. I'm able to go and look at my own behaviors and change them. Now, I don't know if I talked about it in the last, I think we talked about it in the Doing the Right Thing. I talked about that yesterday. I'll share it again today. Like when my wife told me, hey, you can't tell me how I think or how I feel. Like you literally can't. Objectively, you cannot tell me that. I had to sit back and think about, dang, she's right. I can't tell her what she thinks and feels. I need that take the personal responsibility, insight, right, on myself. Dang, right? But if I didn't take personal responsibility, I would have cast that off. You know what you're talking about. You're crazy. Here you go, starting problems again. I'm just not going to own any behavior of mine. So there's going to be no growth. Because there's no insight. Because why would I look at myself if everybody else is the problem? Right? So that's the first issue, not taking personal responsibility. The second issue is that you are going to be completely and totally blaming and accusing other people all the time. All the time. You can be accusing and blaming other people. right? Because it's never your fault. Yeah. And here's the thing. Even when you do something and someone does bring it to your attention, you know what you're going to do? Minimize it, excuse it away. Well, I wouldn't have done that if you didn't. Or it's not even that big of a deal what I did. You know, you still overreacted to it. We'll minimize our behavior. We're going to amplify theirs. They're villains. How dare they ask us a clarifying question? You know, they should just take what we say and just know right out the gate. The problem is them. You know, forget the fact that I just called them all types of names and then started breaking down and crying and then started doing all these things and became defensive simply because they asked a clarifying question. But I'm going to minimize my part. It wasn't that big of a deal. You just didn't understand, you know, or you know, you don't understand the family I come from. You know, this is just how I am. Like, we don't come up with any excuse to excuse our poor behavior instead of saying, dang, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have called you that. You know what? Yeah, I should have listened better. And so what do you think happens when you keep blaming someone and accusing someone and minimizing your own behaviors and amplifying theirs? What do you think happens? You're confused as to why they don't want to spend time with you. You're confused as to why they don't want to open up to you. You're confused as to why now they're getting closer and closer to somebody else. They're spending more time on the phone with somebody else, more time at the office with somebody else. You're confused as to why. I'm not excusing those behaviors, right? You know, but don't be confused as to why. Why would I want to connect? And even if they're not doing that, but let's just say they just don't want to really connect with you. Oh, we're not intimate anymore. Why are we intimate? You never come on to me. Yeah, no, I don't. You're right. I don't come on to you. Why would I want to come on to you? All you ever do is attack me. You blame me. You accuse me. When I bring up stuff that you do to me, you minimize it or you excuse it away. No, why would I want to be close to someone who doesn't, to me, it doesn't seem that you really want to hear anything I got to say. I can't connect with somebody like that. And then, of course, you blow that off as, oh, you're so dramatic. Oh, I'll just take care of myself or whatever the case may be. So that's what happens. That's the second problem with not taking personal responsibility. Because if you're not owning your behavior, you're punting on to somebody else and blaming somebody else. Blaming the boss, blaming your spouse, you're blaming everyone else. It's everybody else's fault. It's never, ever your fault. And if it ever is your fault, you're going to minimize. And I even forgot this part. Then you're going to deflect. It's not that big of a deal. You're making a big deal out of nothing. You know, you always try to deflect. So yeah, that's going to ruin a relationship if all there is accusation and blame and criticism and contempt and deflecting and minimizing. That's going to ruin a relationship. Someone cannot connect with you if that's how you're operating, you're moving on a regular basis. So that's a second issue with not taking personal responsibility. And probably the last and worst issue with taking personal responsibility, if not taking it, is that you are going to adopt a victim mindset, a victim mentality. And this is debilitating and crippling in the worst way in all ways. And the reason why is because when you adopt that victim mindset, what ends up happening is you give all of your power away. You don't even know it. When it's like, oh, woe is me. My wife is so mean, or my husband is so mean, and you just don't understand, or everyone's just tearing me down, and you don't understand why. And you just finished railing on them. You just kicked in the door on their business meeting. You just were completely dysregulated in the restaurant. You just did all of that, but now, it was me. There's just nothing I can do. I'm just stuck. And you're right. You would be stuck. And the reason why you're stuck is because you adopted the victim mentality. A victim, by definition, cannot help themselves. That's why they're a victim. And you keep adopting this over and over and over again because you're scared to lose love. And the crazy part about it is, I want to pound the table so bad. The crazy part about it is you're already losing it by not taking personal responsibility. Listen, they lied to us when we were younger. They told us making a mistake means that we're not going to get love. That's a lie. It's okay to make mistakes. We're imperfect people. People make mistakes all the time. The only person who never made a mistake was Jesus Christ. That's it. Everyone else has made mistakes. Everybody. It's normal. It's part of the course. It's part of being human. So that's a lie that if you make mistakes, you don't get love, because there's plenty of imperfect people who are receiving love. So that's a lie. We have to undo that lie, because the key thing is when we make mistakes, when we take personal responsibility, that's what draws people closer to us. Because when we take personal responsibility, we're letting other people know that your thoughts and your feelings matter. And I want to make sure I don't violate your thoughts and your feelings and your boundaries and things like that. That is what draws people closer to you. Those are the people you want in your corner. I want someone who's going to own their behavior. If they mess up on a deal, I want them to be able to come back and say, shoot, man, I fumbled the bag, bro. I didn't prepare. I wasn't ready, or whatever the case may be. That's who I want on my team, because guess what? That's someone who can change their behavior. That's someone who can do something different. That's someone who's going to have my back. I don't need them to be perfect, but I need them to be able to change and be able to own their behavior so we can do something different, move forward. But if they just adopt this victim mentality where everybody's against me, and it's, oh, woe is me, and my husband doesn't love me, and my wife doesn't love me, and all these things like that, you're never going to change your behavior. If it's everybody else's fault and I don't got to do anything, you're never going to change your behavior. If you're still stuck on holding on to trauma from the past and, well, you don't understand what happened to me back then, you're never going to change your behavior. You're not going to take personal responsibility, and your relationships are going to flounder, and people at the very most, I should say, at the very most, you'll be tolerated. At the most. Not loved, tolerated. Means that, okay, they got to be here. I guess I'll deal with them. I don't really want to talk to them. I don't want to open up to them. I don't want to share nothing with them, nothing like that. I don't want to do that. No. If they got to be here, they got to be here. That's the most you will get. So that thing you're craving, the thing you want the most, that love, that connection, that you want the most, if you continue to have that victim mentality, you will never, ever, 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 ever get it. Ever. You won't. Shoot, you'll even block it from God, because now you're gonna be shaking your fist. Oh God, I don't know why you let this stuff happen to me, and oh my gosh, you really cared about me. You wouldn't, and you can't even. So you even block God with the victim mentality. There's a scripture in the Bible that talks about this. This isn't so much about victim mentality as much as about personal responsibility. But there were two guys in the temple. One was like this priest, and the other guy was a tax collector. And the priest came in, and he's all gloating to God, like, "Oh, I'm so holy and pious, and I'm glad I'm not like that tax collector," and yada yada yada, whatever, and just thinking he's just the greatest thing since sliced bread. But the tax collector, he couldn't even look up in the sky. He's taking personal responsibility. He knows what he's done, so he just looks up to the side. He beats his chest, and he says, "God, have mercy on me, because I'm a sinner." He owned his behavior, and God recognized the tax collector who couldn't even look up. He said, "I'm too ashamed to even look up because I know what I did was wrong. So I'm going to look down, but I'm going to beat my chest, and I'll be authentic. I'm going to be real. I'm going to say, God, forgive me because I sinned. I'm a sinner." And he left justified that day. The other guy did not. So even God honors us taking personal responsibility. I mean, that's what repentance is all about anyways. I'm not preaching today. I'm just saying that's what the power of taking personal responsibility. That's the power of that. And so let's talk about some solutions, right? So we talk about the problems and the issues that come along with not taking personal responsibility. But let's talk about how to go about taking personal responsibility. What exactly does that look like in our day-to-day life, right? So the first part of this, and I don't think this is in any specific order, but the first part of this is always, 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 always own your part in any situation, independent of why you did it, independent of what other people did. Own your part. And ask yourself, does this align with who I am? Is this the right way to communicate? Was this the right way for me to show up? Should I have been on time? Did I say the right things in the meeting? Own your part, independent of everybody and anything else. That's the first step to taking personal responsibility. And if your part caused a problem for somebody else, even if it's a difficult person in the office, and it's like, yeah, they give everybody trouble. They're always tripping over everybody. Let's say they have a victim mentality, right? So you want to excuse it like, it's that person. So I can, no. No, I don't care if it is that. I don't care if they're the worst victim mentality across the board. I don't care if they blame the entire universe for every single issue or problem they have. That is irrelevant to you taking personal responsibility. Completely irrelevant. Completely irrelevant. If I wronged you, hey, I took your stuff and I should have asked. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I did that. My apologies, man, because that's your stuff and I should have respected it. That's the first step to taking personal responsibility. Own your part, period, point blank, end of discussion. That's where it starts. That's where it stops. We do not worry about, oh, but they did. If they didn't say, well, she emasculated me, so, or well, he said that I wasn't a good wife, so no. I'm not saying that stuff is okay. I'm just saying that's irrelevant to taking personal responsibility. You own your behaviors and you make the change. You apologize, you make the change, right? That's critical. You gotta make the change. Don't keep doing the same thing. That's another part as well. Actually, I forgot about the problems. There's a lot of people that say they take personal responsibility and they own their behaviors, because they say, yeah, I did that, and I know I shouldn't have done that, and that's wrong, and God's working on me. But let someone else make the same mistake, and you want to burn the whole place down. But you'll own your behavior. You won't do nothing about it. That's not owning your behavior. I'm going to say that one more time. Just because you own it, just because you say you did something, doesn't necessarily mean you own it. What are you doing afterwards to show that you owned it? Are you apologizing? Are you fixing it? Are you getting better? Like, what are you doing to change it and to get better? And don't tell me I'm just praying about it. Don't tell me that. I hate when I hear that. God's just working on me, and one day something magical is going to happen. He's going to sprinkle some pixie dust on me, and now I'm going to be a great husband, or now I'm going to be a great wife. Why don't you go pick up a book? Why don't you go to therapy? Why don't you start taking personal responsibility for your behaviors? Why don't you start doing that? Fixing that stuff? Following what the Bible says and start putting it into practice instead of waiting for God to do the work for you. Again, that's passing the buck off to somebody else, not taking personal responsibility. Your spouse said, I don't like when you scream at me. Why don't you just stop doing that and talk with a calm voice? Why don't we start there? You got to own your part. Own it. 100%. You got to own your part. That's the first step. The second one, again, these aren't necessarily in type of order. If you're in a situation, you're talking to someone, learn to listen, to understand, and not respond. They may be talking about you. They may not know how to communicate. They may be using you statements. Weather the storm, as long as they're not attacking you specifically and saying like negative things like, oh, you're a horrible person, da-da-da-da. If they're talking about your behaviors, weather the storm and ask yourself, is that true? Did I come off that way? Did I show up that way? Did I yell at them that way? Did I do that? Because if they did, go back to the first step, own it, fix it. Apologize and fix it. But if you're not learning, if you're not listening, if you're not reevaluating yourself and reevaluating your behaviors, you're going to keep doing the same things over and over again. You got to learn to listen. I cannot stress enough how much my wife has changed my life simply because I was able to listen to what she was saying. Because the things she has taught me and the things she told me that I had to take and own and change have blessed so many people as a result. So many people as a result. But I had to learn to listen, to understand where she was coming, where she was saying, and see, okay, is that what's going on? If that's what's going on, I change it. Right? And the last thing, right, is that I want you to really understand this concept. It's a concept. It's not actually a thing. It's a concept. Is that when you start taking personal responsibility, you get your power back. Because see, the thing is, you're trying to control your spouse and your kids and everything else, but you have no control over anybody else, anything else. The only thing you can control is yourself. That's it. That's the only thing you can control. And the beautiful part about it is that's the only thing you have to control. That's it. That's it. You don't got to control anybody else, just yourself. Let the pressure come off you. And now you can just focus on, okay, how can I get better? How can I show up? How can I do things different? That's what we need to do. The concept, that's the power we get back. Because once you understand that and you get that power back, guess what? It will change your life forever, because now I'm not waiting for my wife to get right. I'm not waiting for your husband to get right. We're not waiting for anybody else to get right. I'm going to work on getting me right. And I'm going to start doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Again, watch the other live stream. You can get the whole details on that. All right. But that's power. And that, I'm telling you, it will change your life. It will change your relationships. Your spouse will see a change in you, and they will change in accordance to the change that happens in you. And that wasn't even a direct thing you were trying to do. And so the last thing, guys, and I got to wrap it up because I really got to get going. The last thing, guys, is this: continuously get better. Constantly. You should be reading books. You should be praying. You should be reading your Bible. You should be going to therapy. You watch a podcast. You should be going to seminars. You should be part of group. Like, constantly get better. Because as you continuously improve as time goes on, guess what? There's less mistakes you're going to make. Right? Because I'm not saying it feels good to own our behaviors all the time, but the better I get, the less mistakes I make, and the less I got to do that. Right? So I'm going to wrap it up there. Guys. Listen, thank you for showing up. Please take responsibility. I promise you, taking responsibility, personal responsibility over the things in your life, so not only will it change your life, I'm telling you, it's going to put that power right back in your hands. And now you could do anything you need to do because you have control, full control over yourself. And now you're not worried and waiting for anybody else to fix your life or save you. Superman's not coming, but he doesn't need to, because you have the power to change your life and save your life as well. All right. So, all right, y'all take care. Have a great, awesome, and blessed day. And as always, remember that you are not alone. All right. Y'all take care.